Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Sword Art Online episode review. This one's going to be for Season 1, Episode 7, Warmth of the Heart. This is the last episode on Part 1 of the DVD sets, and it is the second of the 4 stories in Aincrad Volume 2 of the source material novels. So, this is a return to the more to basically the episode that's more similar to the Silica episode, in that the main gist of what this episode is about is Kirito's interactions with Lizbeth and their quest that they go on to help Kirito get the materials needed to make a new sword, which is Dark Repulsor. And so that ends up being a pretty important plot point, just because that is one of the 2 swords that Kirito uses as part of his dual wield skill, which they do reference dual wield in the novel, but they don't in the anime. And I understand why they do that, because what happens basically is that towards the end of the novel story, basically after they have that heart-to-heart moment, he kind of later back in the shop, she questions, wait, why did you need a second sword when your sword that you have right now is probably just as powerful? And then he reveals to her before anyone else that he has dual wield. So if they'd done that in the anime, it would have spoiled that before we get the big reveal in the middle of the Gleam Eyes boss battle, which I think is such a strong moment, obviously in a couple of episodes when we're going to get to it, that they definitely made the right decision here not including that moment from the novel in the episode at this point in time. They're telling these episodes in chronological order rather than kind of cool reveal order, so it made sense. Now, definitely I like the return to this kind of style of episode where it's more of a personal relationship between Kirito and Lizbeth, and it's focused very heavily on who Lizbeth is. She becomes part of the kind of Team Kirito in ALO and stuff like that outside of the game. So it's an important kind of character introduction, even though, like kind of Klein and Silica, she's not the most main character in the overall kind of Sword Art Online universe, but it's just an interesting dynamic here. She is a blacksmith in the game, and it's a very specialized kind of skill path to take in the game, that you're putting so many of your skill points and stuff like that into kind of haggling, selling, the like appraisal type skills, and actually doing blacksmith stuff, that she still has enough points to put into to become a decent kind of mace wielder and stuff like that. But for the most part, you get the idea that she hasn't been out on many quests herself. And so, going on this quest with Kirito is a really kind of important thing for her, because as we find out towards the end of the episode, a lot of her time in the game has been kind of thinking about, getting some sort of a strong connection with something. That's something she's been kind of looking for in this game, that she's, like a lot of characters here, often kind of consider this world not very real. It's all ones and zeros. It's not actually real. But through this interaction, both Kirito and Lizbeth both kind of learned that, the people they meet here are real, that the lives that they have in the game are just as real. Now, it's something Kirito knew about basically the whole time, but just it's something that really highlighted him again, that he was putting his life on the line to save Lizbeth when kind of she got attacked by the dragon, and he was actually really happy that he survived, that it wasn't just he made a sacrifice to save her, that he survived too, and he was happy that that happened. So it's definitely overall a very interesting dynamic, that what happens here, and that she really falls for him because he's just very odd compared to the rest of the players. He plays solo. He doesn't come across as very powerful, but he is insanely powerful in the game. And as I said, it's just that meeting, he comes in asking for a sword, and she kind of questions, like, do you have enough money to pay for this? Because he's not wearing crazy fancy armor. His black worm coat, which debuts in this episode, doesn't really come across as the most fancy piece of gear, but it is actually a fairly high level kind of piece of kind of light armor. But just on outside appearances, he doesn't look like anything special in the game, and so all these kind of weird moments with him, like running up the walls when they get kind of trapped, being able to so effortlessly take on such a powerful monster on his own. They just kind of it's a lot of it's the way a lot of the characters interact when they kind of go on these solo missions with Kirito, that they're just very impressed by all these kind of weird things that happen with him, and his just intensity when it comes to protecting people. And that's another thing that comes out here, that is a complete reference to the whole Sachi thing, in that just before he initiates the fight with the dragon, he demands basically, have your teleport crystal out, basically get ready. And she kind of argues a little bit and is just like, no, no, I can fight too. And then he gets really serious and like raises his voice to her. This is how serious this is to her. He doesn't want someone else dying on his watch, and that comes across very clearly here. And it in many ways begins to set up one of the key parts of the Kirito Asuna relationship, is that she is one of the few players in the game who doesn't who basically he doesn't need to protect. She can look after herself, and in fact she can protect him. And that's a key part of their relationship, in that a lot of the other players that Kirito meets, he is so much better than them at the game that it's very much he has to protect them. Whereas the Kirito Asuna, it's more even, and there's this kind of level. They're both elite players in the game, and it's very fitting that that relationship happens. But you also have I think one of the key parts of this episode is obviously she reveals basically towards the end of the episode, though Kirito can't hear it because they're falling from the sky, but that she's falling in love with him. And it's a very quick thing. This is their first meeting, and this is the first time she's really feeling a connection like this in the game, and he can't hear it. And then just as they're about to have that kind of heart-to-heart when they get back, she makes the sword for him, and she's basically about to kind of reveal how she feels to him. That's when Asuna comes in, and you kind of have already established at the start of the episode that the two of them know each other. She knows that Asuna is kind of secretly going out to meet someone that she really likes, and she's kind of very impressed by this. The book goes into a little bit more detail because it's written from Lizbeth's point of view, so you get a lot of her inner kind of thoughts on things. And the main thing is that early on in the book, in relation to this scene, she talks about how, Asuna is basically the most kind of highly ranked, highly leveled player who's also the most beautiful in the game. In that Asuna is basically the most attractive player in the entire game, especially at such a high level. And I think it's mentioned in this that she's received tons of kind of marriage proposals and stuff like that in the game already. And that's a little bit where Lizbeth's kind of quest for a kind of relationship like that comes from. But for Lizbeth to see Asuna actually interested in someone else really surprises her. And then there's a kind of reveal later on that when she gets a little bit flustered, or that Kirito's there as well, Lizbeth kind of sees that, oh, like the most beautiful player in the game is actually pursuing Kirito rather than the other way around. He's a bit oblivious to the whole thing, and she's kind of shocked by this. So as much as it's a kind of really strong episode for Kirito and Lizbeth's kind of relationship, is a really important episode that really advances the Kirito-Asuna relationship as well, showing that they are having these kind of just moments where they just meet up outside of just battling and stuff like that, doing the bosses, and more so than just kind of deciding to like investigate a murder or something like that. That they meet up on these basically quote unquote dates, as kind of Lizbeth clearly sees it as. And the fact that Asuna is going as far as to like wear earrings and stuff like that to their meetings shows that she likes him. And it's just a really subtle way to show the advancement of their relationship, but it works. That you don't need to show every single meeting between these two characters, but just showing that they often meet up is a big deal. And again, the key emotional part of this episode is Lizbeth finding this out, and that she's kind of fallen for this guy and is about to reveal how she feels, and then suddenly she realizes that he's kind of taken already, that Asuna and Kirito's relationship hasn't started in a romantic sense just yet, but she can just see by the way Asuna has been reacting and the way Kirito reacts around her that it's going to happen at some point. And as much as she would like to kind of start a relationship with Kirito, she's not going to interrupt that and be that sort of person. And it's a very mature way in which this is actually dealt with, and that she tries to remain strong, but has to kind of leave the blacksmith place really suddenly. She has to make up all these kind of excuses for why she's leaving, and kind of runs off to basically get emotional. And that's when you have the Kirito Lizbeth scene where they just kind of, he just mentions that, you know, like, saving you and just being there with you made me realize how important it is to live here, to have survived, that it meant a lot to me, and that she was looking for these sort of connections and kind of found that in Kirito. And it's just it's a nice scene that kind of gets past that kind of awkwardness around the fact that he was aware that she was about to confess her feelings to him, and he's not really sure what to say, but just that she now has a kind of close friend in the game, and she in many ways supports the Kirito Asuna relationship. And it's just, I like just the little jokes from her to both of them, that she's always teasing Asuna about it, and then she asks Kirito to basically say what you said to me to Asuna, because she'll probably really like that. This whole very kind of meaningful speech about living in the game. But that's about all there is to say. The Dark Repulsor sword, I think, is a really cool design of a sword. I love the color. I love the story behind it. Just that, you know, he has one sword which is basically one of the most rarest drop weapons in the game, and then he has a player created weapon that's one of the most powerful in the game, and together it means a lot. It was made by someone who cares for him a lot and stuff like that. It's a pretty meaningful thing, and I like that they just give you a story behind this other sword, and they kind of tell you the story behind both of his swords in this episode. Is there anything else to say about this episode? The fight itself, you don't really see too much of it, but you get some pretty awesome moments where he just deflects the ice breath attack with one sword swipe. Is pretty cool. Just chops its arm off really quickly. He is in complete control against this monster, which is crazy big. And yeah, it's a really emotional episode, and it's definitely not the best episode of the series, but Lizbeth is an interesting character, I think. Just that they show you more different types of characters. Here's a blacksmith character who doesn't participate in battles all that much. And again, it's a kind of return to a kind of more mid-level style thing. This isn't like a front lines thing, but just these important relationships that Kirito develops during his solo travels throughout the game. Pretty important stuff for sure. And again, more advancement of the Asuna and Kirito relationship. Always nice to see as we move into the second half of the Aincrad arc, where Kirito and Asuna's relationship just goes from strength to strength and just really, really becomes really well done. But that has been the episode review. If you have any comments on my review or this episode, definitely leave them in the comments section below. Other than that, thanks for watching this review, and bye.